I'm Kelli Lemon.
And I'm Michael Paul Williams.
And welcome to the After the Monuments podcast, where we look at events and news about race in a historical context and see how, too often, history repeats itself. Welcome to After the Monuments, a real talk about race with Michael Paul Williams and me, Kelli Lemon. And we are kind of coming in, off, schedule, because sometimes you just got to do that. When the topics are hot and ready to go and relate to already what we're talking about, we are definitely going to break in with it. So let's just get to going, Michael Paul. It is, we are wrapping up the month of March and headed into April. And this week, we got to witness two very prominent Black men have a public disagreement. The slap that has been heard around the world. Let's talk, Michael Paul, about really what that means. And a lot of people are still trying to unpack it, but you wrote a column about it in this week's, or today, I think it's today or yesterday's Richmond.com. So let's talk, Michael Paul, the slap that was heard around the world.
Yeah, I witnessed it in real time and was shocked. Yeah, like most people.
You thought it was fake?
I thought it might have been staged until I couldn't hear anything on the TV, and I saw the rage on Will Smith's face. Yeah, and I read his lips. Yeah, and I'm like, this isn't fake. Yeah, and I was horrified. I was horrified at the spectacle of two Black men going at it like that, and two extremely prominent Black men going at it like that on that sort of stage in front of the world. It just, let's be real about how Black men are perceived, all right?
Okay. Let's also talk about that was a produced by Black man and all Black production staff. Yes. Everybody was Black.
Produced by, yes. And this occurred right before Questlove was to be honored for Best Documentary.
Yes.
If you haven't seen Summer of Love. Yeah. Incredible documentary. Yes. I mean, he was a lead pipe cinch as far as I was concerned. Yeah. To win that award, and richly deserving. And that stole his thunder.
Completely.
Will gets the Oscar for King Richard. Steals not only his thunder, but Serena and Venus and Richard. Yeah. And no one comes away from this whole and it just, I don't think it's defensible. As I was saying, how are Black men perceived? Not just in the United States and globally.
Yeah.
Violent,
yeah.
And that's perception has real consequences when the police roll up on us in a traffic stop. It's real. It's not justified. It's wrong, but it's real. And I just thought it was wildly over the top. And I get it. It was a bad joke, insensitive joke, a mean joke. She's been very public, Jada Smith, about her alopecia, her issue. With hair loss. Yeah. Although, more recently, she seemed to have come to terms with it. Will, seen laughing at the joke before he strides up on stage and slaps Chris. Yeah. And let's not get this twisted. If it's someone Denzel size or larger, someone more eye to eye than Will over Chris, he doesn't do that. If it's a white man, he doesn't do that.
Yeah. Because, he didn't get arrested on the spot, which he could have, it was so many. I watched it too. I watched it live, looking at Lupita's face, looking at, Jada literally, rolled her eyes, and that's what Will caught. To know that Chris has made other jokes about Jada.
Yeah. There's some history there.
It was a lot. It was a lot to unpack. I also was like, wow, is this fake? I was like, Will's such a great actor. Like was this all staged? And until like the very, very, when I saw the tears roll down his face, when I heard what supposedly what Denzel had said to him right after it happened, I was like, wow, we just really witnessed. Was that a black man protecting his woman? Was it a black man being out of control? Was it comedians getting their just due? Like all of these things are now in question.
Physical reaction to a non-physical act like that.
Yeah.
A joke. I mean, anyway, I'm in a comedy club.
Mm-hmm.
I got licensed to go up on stage and clock some comedian who, it's just how comedy works. And it doesn't always go down easy. But there's just no excuse for that. And he knows it now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think his mom was quoted as saying that's out of character.
Yeah.
These are two people who have built, it's ridiculous in the context of what we're talking about. These are two people who have built their brands on a certain nerdiness.
Right. Yeah.
Chris Rock.
Yeah.
With his show,
Everybody Hates Chris.
his little biographical show.
Yeah.
And Will, the Fresh Prince,
it
starts off with him getting twirled around on the basketball court by the bullies.
Yeah.
He's the safe rapper.
Yeah.
The main, the guy that, the rapper you could take home to mom.
Yeah.
And then he parlays that into this wonderful comedy show, and then he becomes an action hero.
Mm-hmm.
And then he becomes a biopic hero.
Yeah.
So he's not built his brand on being hard.
Mm-mm. No.
And
he felt like he needed to prove that. Well, and I wonder why he felt that night he needed to prove that he was from West Philadelphia, born and raised.
Yeah,
and like you said, if that was Adam Sandler, if that was Will Ferrell, I don't even know if I said his last name right, would he have gone on that stage?
No, and I think the reaction might have been different too. But
Dave Chappelle or Jamie Foxx. Would you have ran on that stage?
No, I think there is probably some simmering kind of resentment at the past jokes that Chris has directed in Jada's direction. I do think Chris is someone he felt where he could go there.
Yeah.
But Sean Combs coming on and basically acting as peacemaker. Those of us of a certain age, some people weren't around when, back in the 90s when we had the East Coast, West Coast nonsense that played out in disastrously violent fashion.
Yeah.
With, Team East Coast with Combs and the Notorious B.I.G.
Tell him, Michael.
Team West Coast.
I like talking about this stuff.
With Suge Knight and Tupac.
Yeah.
And Tupac and Biggie are dead.
Yeah, dead.
And how can anyone process what happened the other night with some sort of excuse-making or explanation in that context, in that framework? We don't need these beefs.
No.
We can't be talking about Black Lives Matter. And we can't be talking about conflict resolution to our young people.
Yeah.
How to resolve conflict when a joke, a bad joke, an insensitive joke is an excuse to go up on stage and do that. No.
Yeah.
No, there's got to be self-control. There's got to be impulse control. There's too much of this out in the world. I was disrespected.
Yeah.
Trivial stuff.
Yeah.
I was disrespected. So the solution to my disrespect or being disrespected is for me to shoot someone. And
we're gonna get into the gun violence and police and all of that stuff because I slapped you maybe because I ain't have my piece. Or you know what I'm saying? Because that's what the younger kids are doing right now is the disrespect from them is, I'm pulling out this assault rifle on you at this point.
Or it's not over with the slap. If we're not talking about Chris and Will and people coming to their senses, 50-something-year-old men coming to their senses, and if that plays out with different people, the slap the humiliation that's produced by that slap. And that's what it was. You slap someone, a man slaps another man to humiliate him.
Yeah.
He felt like Chris had humiliated Jada. And by the way, I thought the hair was rocking. I know.
Like, as a person that also did the same thing, like,
she
come
looked,
on.
She looked good. I get, it's not by choice, and there's some pain behind that. But, like I said, she has expressed that she's come to terms with that, and she doesn't care what people think. And I thought she was rocking it.
Yeah.
But he felt his wife was humiliated, so he humiliated Chris. Okay, say Chris feels humiliated now and punked. In a different scenario with different people, that becomes, it doesn't end there. It doesn't end like this one appears to have been resolved. It's like, okay, he slapped me. I'm going to go get my piece, and I'm going to do something to him. So it's just, we got to be better.
Yeah.
On all counts, we've got to be better. We've got to be more sensitive. And I get comedy is edgy. We need to be more sensitive. But we've got to have more control.
Talk about comedy. Comedy is sensitive. Comedy is edgy. It seems to me, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, but that when Black comedians have something to say, about anything that is just not norm, race, sex, anything, they get criticized quickly by. And I'm talking about Black comedians. And let's talk Dave Chappelle. Like, let's just kind of...
And don't think the reaction to this is totally unrelated. Because people are in their feelings about Dave Chappelle, too. There's a big debate going on about that, too. Now, regardless of where you are on the Dave Chappelle camp, this is what comedy does. This is what... It's topical. It's not bland. It creates controversy. It creates emotions. That's what that's been the role of the comic for a minute now. It's not all Bill Cosby. and we could take that another step too. I was about to say,
we don't have a long, because you brought in a whole nother topic.
The nice comic
that I wasn't even thinking about, but when it deals with anyway. All right, let's talk about how Black people right now are grouping this whole scenario into basically like, you did that in front of company, like your grandma would say. I can't believe you embarrassed the family in front of company. Well, how do you feel about that?
Well,
like the whole race taking on.
Look, I'm old enough where I'm fascinated to process reactions that sometimes seem generational. I know the argument and the feeling of collective shame for the actions of one. That's part of our history as Black people in America. Somebody shoots up a school. Oh Lord, please don't let him be Black.
Yeah, right.
Somebody.
When the Unabomber was Black, we all was like, "What do you mean he's Black? That's not what we do." But yeah, we were like,
the Unabomber wasn't.
Not the Unabomber. Oh
Black.
My gosh, what's the guy? What's the mass? Oh gosh, he was shooting everybody.
Oh, the sniper, the DC sniper.
The sniper, not the sorry, the sniper.
Yeah, it's it's part of our burden that we have the sins that would be processed as individual flaws in the white community, where race wouldn't be any part of it. Just mental health issue or whatever. Because I get the email. This is because your people are depraved. Your people have issues. It becomes a larger thing.
Wow.
And so, in the past, there were real world consequences for one Black person doing something, or the thought that one Black person had done something. The entire larger community would take that out on us. It placed us at risk.
Yeah.
So in my generation, those feelings are real. Now, maybe in younger generations, they're trying to shed that assumed guilt or that kind of tangential guilt about events like, that happen, bad things that happen. But, my generation's been conditioned with an uphold the race kind of ethos. And I think it still has broad application because in many ways America is still extremely racist.
Yeah. Let me throw this out there. I saw on a post where someone said, maybe we do need to get back to a little bit more aggression, right? How could that have played if Nat Turner was still alive?
Aggression toward each other?
This is on somebody's face.
This is where I get lost.
Yeah, but
we need more aggression toward each other?
Nat Turner versus MLK.
And what planet?
Yeah, Nat Turner versus MLK. If somebody was more aggressive or more violent in their ways and their thinkings versus the way that MLK came with the peace, would we be different as a race and a culture?
But I saw it on somebody else's post. Don't hold me against it. I think you're talking about aggression against white supremacy and white racism when you're talking about, say, the reactions of Nat Turner versus MLK in different time, different place. Just Will and Smith are two black men going at it.
Yeah.
I just don't get the. We do certainly. If I'm trying to hear the argument that black men need to be more aggressive and violent toward each other, because that makes no sense to me. There is no empirical data that supports that. Our aggression and violence turned inward is a major problem that we have to deal with.
Yeah. They also were talking about January 6th at the Capitol in regards to how white America is not embarrassed by it at all. White America didn't feel like someone had to speak up and speak out and give apologies. And for the most part, most of the people that were involved got away with what they did. How do you look at these two scenarios as well? Again, I'm just a social media person that likes to throw these at you.
I think the drug of whataboutism is like any other drug. It distorts our thinking. I don't know what January 6th has to do with this. People ought to be embarrassed, and some white people are. And they need to be locked up. But that's a criminal justice issue. And by the way, Will ain't locked up. Yeah. Don't try this at home. Black man out on the street, because you will be locked up.
Yeah.
So I don't see the application there at all.
All right. Real quick, After the Monuments is proud to thank Team Henry Enterprises for their support of our show. Team Henry Enterprises is a Black-owned contracting firm specializing in office, retail, medical, multifamily, and higher education construction of all scopes and sizes. In the wake of the George Floyd protest, Team Henry is the very firm contracted by the City of Richmond to take down the Confederate monuments in Richmond and by many other municipalities to remove other Confederate monuments around Virginia and throughout the Southeast. Learn more about Team Henry and how they can help your community rebuild, renovate, or design at teamhenryent.com. Are we moving on from the slap heard across the world? Yeah. How long do you think we'll talk about this? Do you think this is going to, sizzle down? Are we going to have lectures and discussions about all of the things that...
it's you have this irresistible mix. And I have talked to people who say, I really don't care. But you do have this irresistible mix of celebrity and race and gender. That it's come on. Sometimes a story is just a story. A juicy story is a juicy story.
Yeah.
It's a talker. People are going to talk about it. And they're not going to talk about it forever. I think Will, now that he has apologized, it doesn't take much to derail a career.
Yeah.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Our actions have consequences. How old is that man? That man spent 40 years building up an incredible career that he tried to take a wrecking ball to with one action.
Yeah.
It ruined what should have been the happiest moment of his life. Now, I'm hearing that he's out dancing with the statue, and okay. Yeah. But, when they started talking about taking that Oscar, I'm sure he wasn't feeling like dancing.
Yeah. I'm sure he was acting the rest of the night because there's no way deep down inside that you're happy with what you did.
Yeah. So actions have consequences, and here the consequences. He will survive this. But, the reality is in other situations among other people, they have consequences that, where there's no tomorrow.
Yeah. And make sure you read all about it in Michael Paul Williams' column at richmond.com. All right, let's move on. Recently, the City of Richmond, in the new budget proposal for the City of Richmond, Mayor LeVar Stoney has put a 10% pay increase for all police and firefighters. How do you feel about that? Oh, let me also state that gun violence in the City of Richmond has skyrocketed over these last, since the beginning of the year, but these last couple of weeks, it is like every other story is either somebody was shot or somebody was killed in the city. And then if you are on social media, and I do not understand why these young brothers do this, but the amount of guns that they possess and that are in the city, we're not talking, nines, we're talking, heavy Army guns.
What did H. Rap Brown say? America's violence is as American as cherry pie.
Yeah.
The guns are out there because the laws permit the guns to be out there, and the culture embraces guns. America is the Toys R Us of guns. You won't find, gun ownership in other nations on par with the per capita gun ownership in America. There's at least one gun for every person. And we love our guns, or it seems like a lot of people love their guns. So it's a natural, and a lot of those guns end up on the street. So, it's hard to control. They get stolen. They get, if you have restrictive gun laws in one state, people go across the border and buy guns in some other place. DC's in that situation. So there's that. It's complicated as far as the police piece. We were talking about defunding the police. Yeah. It seems almost insane to contemplate that was the conversation 2 years ago, and now we're defund the police 2020. Now it's like fund the police.
Yeah, give them raises.
Give them raises. Yeah, Joe Biden in his State of the Union, all this money for law enforcement. He's proposing. You got here in Richmond this situation where they're talking about giving police huge raises in the context of a crime spike. Now, we can argue cause and effect. I don't know how much cause and effect there is. Police, I don't know how much police can actually do to stop violence. They just come in after the fact.
Yeah.
They're like, I make a mess. The custodian comes and cleans it up.
Yeah.
So, but it's the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. We're not going to solve the problem of gun violence, of violent crime, by throwing money at individual police officers. I don't know why and how Richmond's police salaries got so low compared to the other jurisdictions. That's we're talking about neglect at all. All of this is framed in neglect. $44,000 a year. Yeah, that's a horrible starting wage. But how did that happen?
Yeah,
did the council or the mayor not give police a raise for it's just, you just now realize that you're way behind the surrounding counties and you're in a competitively untenable situation. So that's real. But, saying we're going to address our crime spike by throwing money at law enforcement is at loggerheads with the arguments that were being made in 2020. That had people talking about defunding the police, which really, some people say meant, no, taking that money and putting it toward front-end resources that will uplift communities and help reduce crime in the first place.
Yeah.
So that police aren't just coming in like a custodian sweeping up the results. No, we're just gonna throw insane amounts of money, and the messaging is totally off, and it all comes down to politics.
Yeah,
it always comes down to politics. No politician's going to be caught, being accused of being soft on crime. Black, white, Democrat, Republican, they're not trying to go there. Mm-hmm. And LeVar Stoney's a politician.
Yeah,
with ambitions. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden's president. He's a Democratic president, but he's trying to get he's trying to hold Congress for the Democrats. Mm-hmm. And so it gets caught up in politics. But political solutions do not translate into real world solutions.
Yeah.
They're politics.
And nobody's really, I think people were more excited that they were getting raises, but not even processing the fact that we were trying to defund them 2 years ago. Finally, they're getting raises. I feel like that's the energy that was happening once it was announced. It wasn't whoa, wait, but what else are we doing? How are we, solving, like you said, the preventive conversation? What are we doing towards that?
Yeah, it's just reactive. Oh, police salaries are too low. We're going to throw a lot of money at them. Well, even in the police department, there's some ambivalence about how this is playing out. Mm-hmm. People are talking about how, wage compression. You give the newcomer a lot of money, and then, some of them, well, wait a minute. This isn't playing out, in my paycheck in an equitable fashion.
Yeah.
There's talk about, maybe having it be more incentivized with training and whatnot, so that you produce better police officers. And mind you, the backdrop for all this is this video we've all seen in the Family Dollar, where, it didn't look good to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a freaking Family Dollar. Mm-hmm.
Give the background for those that are listening to this nationally. A woman. Go ahead.
A woman, who was suspected of shoplifting. No charges were made, by the way. Mm-hmm. Suspected of shoplifting, ended up on the ground, screaming in pain, on video with a police officer on top of her. Yeah. Just not a good look.
And then she got suspended from her job, from her city. I think she worked for the city too, or something like that.
She worked for the school district. I believe.
Yeah. And she got suspended. Yeah.
But all Family Dollar. Yeah. I mean, it's just, again, it goes back to how about de-escalating a situation? Yeah. Especially one that's not involving nonviolence.
Yeah.
It just, if something that trivial could end up with a woman on the ground, face down, with the police officer on top, you understand how George Floyd happened. Yeah. It's just we it's like we've forgotten everything from 2020.
Yeah, those masks came off and everybody's like, woohoo!
Yeah. We haven't learned, and that's America. Yeah, we absorb a lesson for a hot minute, and that's it. We talk about social justice for a hot minute. Yeah. Something happens, we abolish the death penalty, and then another General Assembly session rolls around and they try to reverse that. We're stuck on stupid. Yeah. And stuck on racist and stuck on all sorts of things that aren't advancing us, that aren't moving us forward. Yeah. Whatever can be said about law enforcement and policing in substantial ways, it's not working. We're trying to get some oversight here in Richmond with our civilian review board.
I was about to bring it up. Good segue.
And the mayor has put forward something. We had a city council committee put forward something with some real teeth, and we had a mayor put forward something that's real conventional and really leaves a lot of the control of the situation in the hands of the police department. And the problem historically has been police policing the police. So we keep doing the same things, wash, rinse, spin, repeat. This is how our public policy.
That's our dirty laundry, right?
Yeah. That's how our public policy functions. The same tired cycles producing the same unsatisfactory results. Yeah. And whenever we talk about delving deeper and doing something restorative, doing something that might actually uplift communities so that the problems that plague us might ameliorate, those conversations never take off, or when they do, they aren't sustained. And we've got to get in a space where we can have sustained, substantive solutions that lead to real change in the way we're doing things.
Yeah. All right. Real change came over at the University of Richmond, announced officially this week that after protest and different arguments with the school board of trustees, and also University of Richmond has a new president, 6 buildings are being renamed because they were named after slave owners, or they had racist connotations to them. Let's talk about that a little bit. Yeah. What impact is that having on the university that is outside of the city but claims the city, but are they really living Richmond?
Well, I mean, I will say I was delighted to see that. In this case, it was justice delayed, ultimately wasn't justice denied. We had the situation, we haven't talked about this, out at Montpelier, James Madison's homestead, kind of the modern James Madison's version of Monticello and Jefferson, where the descendants of the enslaved were in a power-sharing agreement on the board there, and Montpelier reneged on that to the disgust even of some of their staff members. So again, backsliding. We had this moment and then we backslid. So I was heartened to see that at least in this situation at the University of Richmond, they came through. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to happen, but they came through. People were finally listened to. This was a situation where the majority, the substantial majority of the students and the faculty desired this outcome. And it was resisted initially. And they have finally done the right thing.
Yeah. 6 buildings. I mean, and again, the students, I think, the fact that they listened to the students, and even hearing from the Black students at the University of Richmond, they were going through things before this where they just felt like they had no place. There was very blatant use of the N-word, to these students. And so, like you said, we're glad that some of the rights are wronged. It did state, though, that they're using this as an example or a way to now rename everything. Like they're using it as a policy to put in place of how they're naming anything henceforward.
Everything we engage in as a society demands reinterrogation. When we stop reinterrogating our policies, who we choose to honor in public spaces, the way we go about criminal justice, we stop growing. Yeah. That's the opposite of progress. I think reinterrogation is always healthy.
I like it. That's how we're going to end this. This was just a quick one. We were getting together to chat. Anything else going on in the world that you want to make sure that we talk about right now that relates to anything that you're writing about, anything that we should look forward to coming up that you could share? Or keep it a secret, cuz.
Well, I mean, there's just so much going on. I'm going to be writing about a fascinating exhibition. I wouldn't even call it an exhibition because St. Paul's Episcopal Church in downtown Richmond is not a museum, but it has a lot of history, and it was a church that at one time was deemed the Cathedral of the Confederacy because of its history. Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee sitting in its pews, a lot of Confederate iconography. And this parish, which is still majority white, began interrogating its history after Dylan Roof walked into that Charleston church and killed 9 Black parishioners. And this is one of the places where they've landed, where they have an African-American artist, Janelle Washington, a paper cutter who is enormously talented based on what I saw. And this is Lenten season, and kind of in a version of the 14 Stations of the Cross, she has 14 paper-cut panels, if you will, that describe the history of the church, the racially troubled history of the church, which is kind of a mirror for the racially troubled history of Richmond and Virginia and America. And I think she did a splendid job, and I'm going to write about that.
Sounds good. You can find Michael Paul Williams' columns at richmond.com. And thank you, as always. We are going to come to you soon with education, health, and then we're going to get into marijuana. But is religion on our list of topics?
It ought to be.
We're going to add it in sports as well. Thank you for listening to After the Monuments, a real talk about race with Michael Paul Williams and Kelly Lemon. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to this episode of After the Monuments. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcast. After the Monuments is a Virginia Video Network production and produced by Matt Pachilli, Michael Paul Williams, and me, Kelly Lemon. Technical direction and editing from Bill Barksdale. Executive production from Paul Farrell, Diane Salvatore, and Paige Mudd. Will Royer provides studio support. Our artwork is by Krishna Mathis. I'm Kelly Lemon, and we'll see you next week on After the Monuments.